Hello, this is Berlinologist here. I thought I'd do another YouTube presentation. This one will be slightly different from my the last one that I posted, because my last one was more of a book review. This one is sort of giving the reasons as to why I've chosen to make this presentation this particular way. When I started to get into Berlin, it actually happened with Cornelius Ryan's book, The Last Battle, which I actually spoken a little bit about, and it's on my right, on my left shoulder, and that was in the mid-80s. So the Cold War was very much alive at that point, and it was at that time when I was thinking of how I would go to Berlin at that point in my life, because I became so fascinated with the city. And one of the things is to find out from the tourist information guide in Berlin about a marathon, because every year in Berlin they run the Berlin Marathon. And in 1987 they sent me an application form, and they sent me like how I should fill in the application form, when I need to actually post it in. And they also sort of gave me stickers and all sorts of knickknacks of the type of thing that you'd expect to receive. And this, I think, was to actually highlight the city in every which way that they can, because it was actually to make the city relevant, when really it was costing the West German government millions of Deutschmarks to keep it going. What I've got here is like a little pamphlet, and it's just got the city of Berlin, if you can see that here. And I used to have this when I was in the army. I used to have this on my locker wall, and actually under a wall. I remember there was like a bedside light, and I used to have it underneath the bedside light. And so I could always look at it, because I was really determined to actually see the city. And I never looked at the back of it, and it's really one of those for army recruitment for American soldiers, not British soldiers. So I was really amazed, and I was thinking, where did I get this? Because I have no clue, and I have no memory. But this is the one thing that I actually treasure, because it was the thing that got me inspired to actually seeing the city. And if you can see here, you can see that is the church, the Wilhelm Memorial Church, that they call the Rotten Tooth. That's the nickname for it. So yeah, I can't believe I still have this, but this is something that I will keep, and because this will be really hard to find. I'm sure, you know, if you were to try and look for this, chances are you'll find this on eBay, but when you would, I don't know. But yeah. So this is something that I will always sort of treasure. When I went to East Berlin, I talked about this in my other video presentation, and I said about those music notes that I actually bought, and these are the ones. And I mean, I haven't really seen this in a long time, but these are what they look like. So you've got the Joachim Gruner, that one. Then you've got Fritz Gleisner, Zweite Klaviersonate. And then you've got this one, Reihe Hammermusik by Dieter Nauka. And even got the prices. This one was 4 East Deutschmark, and this one was 9.50 Deutschmark. On this one, it doesn't have a price, and I think these were actually printed in Leipzig, in East. So, and I looked through these, and you know, because I can read it, but I have to tell you, there's some of the music notation I don't even recognise, like that there, that down there. So if anybody who's reading this sees this, knows what that is, please put it in the description box below. I think I've got another one here where I just cannot read it. I just do not know what it means. There. I have not a clue. Okay, in Berlin at the time there was like the information centre, and you'd get these pamphlet for West Berlin and East Berlin. Now the one for West Berlin, I don't know where that is. I've either misplaced it or lost it. But this is for East Berlin. And if you look, you will see the Palast der Republik, which is the Palace for the Republic, which was built on the April the 23rd, or it's completed April 23rd, 1976. Now, if you were to look at Berlin now, it's completely different. I mean, there's buildings there that no longer exist. So it's fascinating how Berlin actually changes with time. New buildings are built, other buildings are torn down, and I think that the other reason is what it actually represents. I've got another picture here, Stasi Hell or Workers' Paradise, and you actually see you've got another picture of the Palast der Republik, which was a government building, but it was also open for the public, and the public can actually go in there, and they had concerts in there, and I think even they had an ice skating ring there, and you actually see a Trabant down there at the bottom there. So it's really this, the East Berlin that I saw in the 80s no longer looks the way it does today. And today it's, because now they've rebuilt, or they built the Humboldt, I think it's a Humboldt building, palace, from scratch, literally from scratch. They tore that building down and they built the Humboldt. I think it's called the Humboldt. I may have mispronounced it, but yeah, it's very significant because that was here is like the centre, the very centre of Berlin. Okay, so when I was in Berlin last, I think it was in 2013, I wanted to be a tour guide, and at that time my cousin was living in Berlin with his girlfriend in Kreuzberg. It's a district known as Little Istanbul because there's so many Turks that actually live there, and the Turks that live in Istanbul are known as Gastarbeiters because they had to help rebuild the city, the culture of the city has now significantly changed as a result of all these Gastarbeiters that work there. And so in 2013 I wanted to become a tour guide, and like I said, my cousin actually was living there with his girlfriend, and so I chose to get on a course to study for my blue badge to be a tour guide, but things didn't work out the way that I'd hoped they would. And I actually remember being in going into a corner shop because I needed to have a new SIM card for the phone that I was having. That's one of the things that you have to do if you go to a foreign country. You've got to get a new SIM card for your phone. And there was a Turkish guy, and we got talking. And after a while, he talked to me like he knew me, and he'd always, instead of saying my name once, he would say it twice. So instead of saying it just my name Juan, you go Juan like that. It's Juan, you'd say. And then I told him a bit about my story, and I was talking to him, and I was saying to him, I said, yeah, I want to be a tour guide. And then he would go Juan. He'd say Juan. He'd say, if you want to move to Berlin, I'll teach you everything that you need to know. That's what he said. I'll never forget it. I'll teach you everything you need to know. And what he was wanting to teach me was to become a taxi driver. And I was in that sort of headspace at the time when I was thinking, well, why would I want to be a taxi driver? And it was one of those, you know, it was like a light bulb moment in his head, but not mine. You know, because my mind was set on being a tour guide. However, in retrospect, I see the value of what he was saying. Because when you become a taxi driver, you get the knowledge. And when you get the knowledge, you know how to read the city. And when you're a tour guide, that's what you need to know. You need to know all the place names. You need to know all the parts, not only the names of the roads and the streets and the quickest way to get there. And I never saw it. At the time, I never saw it. So cut a long story short, I had to fly back to the UK. And at that time, everything was starting to fall apart, even though I wasn't aware of it. So when I eventually did go back to Berlin, I went back to that shop. And then I realised that he was no longer there. That corner shop he only had for 3 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, he sold it. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't get hold of him because I didn't have his telephone number. So I didn't know where he was. And I remember going to the new owner and asking the new owner, did he know where, you know, did he have the guy's phone number? And he said no. So I was at a loss as to what to do. So eventually I went to see another guy a few shops down who had a soup shop. You heard me right, it's a soup shop. He sold soup. So when you'd go in there, he would give you a bowl and he would ladle out soup, and you'd just eat soup like, you know, if you was to eat in or drink coffee in a cafe. It was really weird. But I asked him because I remember him talking to this guy, and he said, no, I didn't know him. But the two of them spoke to each other as though they knew each other. So I never got in contact with that guy ever again. And it seemed to be that things were sort of coming apart at the seams because I couldn't find who this guy was. And the biggest mistake I ever made was to not ask for his telephone number. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but I just didn't do it at the time. And I didn't expect that guy to have a shop for only 3 weeks and then to sell it. But that's exactly what he did. So when he was saying to me about being a taxi driver, I never saw the value of what he meant when he made that suggestion. I really didn't see it. But he was actually offering me, you know, the keys to the kingdom. But I just didn't see it at the time. My mind and my heart was set on being a tour guide, not realising that a tour guide is a seasonal job. What are you going to do when you're off season? And plus, it probably may take maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years before you can establish yourself as a bona fide tour guide. So that was the biggest problem. The other problem was my cousin no longer stayed in the city. He went back to Vienna. So he never went back to Berlin. And so my ace in the hole. So just a slight edit, but my cousin he flew back to Vienna, so that the person that could help me out the most was now no longer available to me, unfortunately. And so I was in a precarious situation because I needed to have a place to stay, and I was like staying in youth hostels, so I'd stay in a youth hostel, and because of the situation that I was in, I would stay, you know, 3 days in one youth hostel, 4 days in another, and I'd have to keep moving around the city because, you know, of the bookings, because it was been so booked up. So I was looking for a place to stay, and there was a place in Neukölln that was offered, but it was a commune, you know, and I thought, oh, because you know, you're at a certain age where you want your own privacy, you want your own space. And so anyway, I thought I'd go to see this this commune in Neukölln, which is by Tempelhof Airport, which is now, I think, a part of Berlin history, where the airfield is now all open for the public. I don't know if it is now, but it certainly was then. So people would, you know, sort of walk their dogs, and you know, and they'd skateboard and ride their bikes and stuff like that. So it was a really nice part of the city. And so I went to see this lady who owned a commune, thinking that it was like with a garden, you know, so it was this massive place. But it wasn't. It was in an apartment block upstairs on this, like the third or the fourth floor. And I thought, are you kidding me? So I went to this commune, buzzed on this door, and I spoke to the lady, and I remember I would have to step over these two dogs that were just lying on the floor, so you'd have to mind your step. So I spoke to this lady, and then there was all these people that were a lot younger than me. You know, they were like in their 20s, and I thought, well, is this it? You know, if you're that age, that would be the perfect place to stay. But I just felt a bit uncomfortable because you know, these kids were sort of a lot younger than I was. But I know that the girl was sort of taken to me. You know, she really wanted me to sort of stay, and I thought, I was in two minds. You know, I was rubbing my chin at that point. So anyway, my cousin's girlfriend called me, and she offered me the room in her apartment where I could stay. And of course, you know, I jumped at the chance, but I felt in two minds. Not so much in two minds, but I felt that my loyalties, because I felt I on one hand I was kind of loyal to this lady with the commune, because I did sort of say that I wanted to stay there, and then my cousin's girlfriend offered me a greater opportunity and that much more privacy. What could I do? So I went with my cousin's girlfriend. Only problem is with my cousin's girlfriend, I didn't really know her that well, but thankfully we got on really well and we didn't have any problems at all. So anyway, as I say, she couldn't stay in Berlin because she had to go back to Austria herself, because her being Austrian. So accommodation was a problem. So eventually I had to draw a conclusion and think, well, what am I going to do now? So there was another place in Pankow, which is another district in Berlin, which is in Eastern Berlin, which I eventually got. And the lady there was very, very kind, and she had a really nice place for me. But the only problem was when I had to fly back to the UK again, because there were certain things I had to take care of, and then I flew back again. I realised that it was a noisy part of Berlin because the planes were flying overhead, and like every 50 seconds or every minute or so there was a plane flying, and I thought, oh my God, it just wasn't happening. It was as though it wasn't, all the puzzle pieces just wouldn't refuse to come together. So eventually I had to knock the tour guiding on the head, and I eventually came back to the UK, and as a result I haven't been back to Berlin since. So anyway, that's my little story about my wanting to be a tour guide in Berlin.